Hello, can everybody hear me? Hello, can you hear me? I'm going to be yelling. Can everybody hear me?
Can everyone please, can we get started? Can everyone quiet down, please? Can we please get started? Yadira, can we please get started?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Chelsea Land Use Committee. Raise your hand if you can hear me. In the back, you cannot hear? Are we ready? Yeah, we're ready to go. Great. Keenan? Oh. My name is Carrie Keenan. Jeffrey LaFrance, chairs of the Chelsea Land Use Committee, which usually meets monthly, and this is our April meeting. Just some quick community board stuff to get out of the way. MCB4 has adopted a hybrid meeting policy whereby we will meet in person with a remote option. All community board members will require an in-person quorum to come to order, and that's okay. Committee members are expected to attend meetings in person unless they have a disability or an extraordinary circumstance as defined by the New York State Open. Remotely can fully participate in the meeting, their cameras on. Due to the public health best practices and space limitations, we encourage members of the public to join virtually. Members of the public that are attending remotely can fully participate in the meeting. The MCB4 hybrid policy can be found on our website. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and currently live streaming on YouTube. We have a few extra words tonight on decorum. Our bylaws state that board members are expected to treat other board or committee members, members of the community, representatives of city, state, federal agencies, and elected officials, and all others with respect and courtesy while acting in their capacities as board members. We are also expected to conduct all board affairs with fairness and decorum. Similarly, we request and expect the same of all who attend our meetings as well. We will not tolerate disorderly or disruptive or offensive conduct or comment. We make space for each person to speak during our public session, and disrupting others is unacceptable and directly at odds with our desire and commitment to hear from everyone. We ask that everyone conduct themselves appropriately or they may be asked to leave. Just for those who are here in person, when there are disruptions, I will say, because I'm usually on the screen, we can't hear you over there, which means the recording for YouTube can't hear you either. So you're really not, you're defeating the purpose of wanting to be heard by disrupting the meeting. We have quorum, and we have one item on our agenda tonight. The Chelsea NYCHA development team is here to present Fulton and Elliot Chelsea survey results. For the committee, we're switching up the order of things a bit tonight. First, we'll hear from Simon and the development team. They'll give a presentation. Next, we'll hear from the public. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak on the presentation and ask questions. We will be recording your questions, so they are answered, if not tonight, then shortly. We will then move to a committee discussion. As everyone in this room knows, we have been asking for this information for a long time, and now we have it. So please, let's give the team the opportunity to take everyone through it without disruption. With that, I'll turn it over to Simon from NYCHA to start the presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. My name is Simon Kowitsky. I'm a vice president in the real estate department at NYCHA, and thank you for having me today. I was asked to come and speak about the resident survey process that took place at Fulton and Elliot Chelsea houses in the first half of last year, and which was part of the engagement process that we undertook in close collaboration with resident leaders from both Fulton and Elliot Chelsea to think about other alternative investment strategies for these campuses. And so I'll walk a little bit through the process that we went through and some background, and then I'll share the survey results. I'll also note I have a URL link in the PowerPoint presentation. So these results are online right now, so you can go and view them directly. Next slide. Yeah. You can go to slide two. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So, as I mentioned, in early 2023, we had conversations. We at NYCHA and the PAC partner team, Essence Development, had conversations with the resident association leadership from Fulton, Elliot, Chelsea. They asked us to devise an engagement plan to get resident input on, again, alternative directions that we might take this project. That could include the construction and replacement of existing housing here across both campuses. To notify the community that there would be this reevaluation taking place. Resident Association presidents distributed a letter to all households. A copy of the letter is in this presentation. I'm sure it'll be made available on the MCB4 website as well. And they essentially, as I said, were clear with existing residents and families of the developments that they've asked NYCHA in essence to develop this plan, and that you'll be hearing more from the development team and from NYCHA about the process and what those options would look like. Next slide. So beginning on March 20th of last year through May 20th, we conducted, together with Essence, a 60-day engagement process. Over this period, we hosted over 35 community meetings and had a whole array of different engagement activities across the community that altogether drew participation from over 1,000 residents. So that includes 18 town hall meetings in this space that we're in now, and also at Hudson Guild at Elliot Center. Over 13 different small group meetings with groups of neighbors from different developments or buildings or floors that wanted to sit in a more condensed group and really go through the material together. One of the photos here at the bottom right is actually showing the team walking through what they created is a model, basically showing the existing campuses, how new buildings could be constructed in their place, how that phasing would take place over time. So there are a whole range of different opportunities to really walk residents through these different ideas. There were also 4 virtual meetings that were held that were available to all members of the community. Every weekend throughout this term, we also hosted tours. We brought people out on buses to newly constructed affordable housing on Roosevelt Island and in Long Island City that were completed by the development team in recent years. So residents could really get a feel for what new development looks like, what are the amenities and benefits that come along with these kinds of strategies. In addition, the Housing Opportunities Unlimited team, which is part of the partner team, hosted office hours as they continue to do today. They tabled at community events so there was a lot of one-on-one discussions as well as large group meetings. Next slide. So meetings were advertised by distributing flyers to every family, every door throughout the 2 campuses. So in a similar way that the initial notification from the resident association leaders was distributed, the team also door dropped packets notifying residents of all the different upcoming engagement activities. There was also, again, that HOU hotline and HOU office hours that were available, so people could engage one-on-one and ask any questions if they were, ever wanted more information about what they were receiving at their door. All materials that were distributed were translated into Spanish, Russian, simplified Chinese, and traditional Chinese. English and Spanish were distributed to every door, and the other languages were available in the management office as indicated on the material. At every town hall event and at all the tours, interpretation was also provided in all of these required languages to make sure that the meetings were accessible and inclusive to all community members. We also made copies of all of these materials available at the HOU office and at the Hudson Guild Elliott Center and Fulton Center. Next slide. So at each different engagement touch point, residents were invited to complete a survey. The survey could be completed either online or through a paper copy. The idea of doing a survey was, again, developed in close collaboration with resident leaders at both developments to really get a sense from the community, from their community, about what path people were most interested in. It was not intended to serve as a defining vote the way that some other processes might be crafted. This was a way for the residents to take the temperature of the community and to give us some direction in terms of what people are feeling in terms of their preferences. So a copy of what the survey looked like, the paper survey, is shown on the slide. Again, probably be easier to review after it's posted, but it asked for some information about you and your household, so that information could be verified. And then at the bottom, it asked for you to check off whether you were interested in one of three different options, and you had to select one. The first, whether you'd be interested in this new construction approach that included the replacement of all existing housing, both through a rezoning process and without a rezoning process. And the idea behind asking this question about rezoning or not rezoning was really about time frame and level of density and the look and feel of the development, the community design that people were interested in. And there was information explaining all of this in the meeting, presentations, and in materials that were distributed. The third option was rehabilitation of the existing units, not interested in new construction or rebuilding approaches, want to just rehabilitate, preserve exactly what's here. So as we approach the end of the 60-day engagement period, we wanted to make sure that every family, every household had the same baseline level of information. So we worked with the partner team to distribute information packets. These went out on March 12th. Every family, every household received one. We made copies available to the community board. I'm sure they'll be putting it online as well so that you can look through what that information included. And they really walked residents through in detail, again, summarizing what the different options were and included instructions on how you could obtain a paper survey or go online to indicate your preference that way. The packets also indicated that the survey process would be closed on May 20th. So it set a clear deadline for when the survey would be closed, how long you had to take the survey and give your feedback before that process would end. Next slide. So a little bit more about what the resident information packet included. And again, we can make that available for you to look at in more detail, but it included a detailed description of each of the three options. These are just some screenshots of each page in that packet. It wasn't this small on a page, I promise. But again, it walked through the two different options for new construction, as well as the implications of rehabilitation of existing units. Next slide. It also included a table of frequently asked questions and comparing some of the key points that could be provided under each option. So it was trying to break down and make clear, what the differences and similarities were between each option. It also included a description of the interim repair plans. So under the new construction rebuilding scenarios, as many of you may be familiar, the time it would take to actually provide those new homes for residents would be a little bit longer than under the rehabilitation plan. So the partner team working with NYCHA and resident leaders devised a strategy that we're starting to implement now to kind of hold over the properties until that point. We call it the meanwhile plan, but essentially it's focused on providing things like security, pest control, urgent repairs, and other things so that we can stretch out the life of the properties and the buildings and keep you as safe as possible until it's time to move into your new home. It also included, the information packet included site plans for each option, so you could visualize when certain buildings would be decommissioned or demolished and replaced, and how long it would take to get to each phase so that residents could see where they live on the campus and which phase they would move into. So you could consider those different things as you're making a decision or voicing your preference through the survey. And then lastly, we also included a lot of detail about rights and protections. Wanted to make it really clear that while there is another direction on the table in terms of pivoting to new construction, all of this would still be done under the auspices of the PACT program. The PACT program is the way that we transition developments to project-based Section 8. It's the way that we raise money to make these investments, whether rehabilitation or new construction, and all of the federal regulations governing resident rights and protections, anti-displacement, keeping your rent consistent with how it's calculated today, succession rights, grievance hearings, all of those things stay exactly the same. So we wanted to make that really clear in the packet as well. Next slide. Okay, so getting to the survey results. We wanted to make sure that there was an independent organization that was receiving the survey results, analyzing them, and presenting them out to us. So we engaged with the Citizens Housing and Planning Council, which is a longstanding New York-based civic and research organization. They do have a deep history also working at Fulton, Elliot, Chelsea. And so they were engaged to be that independent third party that received the survey results, analyzed them, performed quality control, quality assurance functions, and then tabulated them and provided their results. So here are the results summarized on the right-hand side of the screen. I'm going to go through a little bit more detail in just a moment, but just to give you the high points. So in the end, and at the bottom of the slide, you can see the link where you can navigate to our website to view this material directly. But 969 residents participated in the survey. That represents about 29% of the total eligible population who submitted a survey response. Eligible population means anybody who is on a lease over the age of 18 could be an eligible participant in the survey. And so we were able to reach 29% of all eligible residents across both campuses. In addition, 37% of all households participated in the process. So that means that at least one member of each of these 37% households had 37% of all households across the campuses had at least one resident who submitted a survey response and participated in the process. So looking at the results, approximately 57% of all respondents indicated a preference for new construction. And the vast majority of those, about 80%, selected the rezoning option.
Please, everyone, decorum, let the speaker speak.
Go to the next slide.
You'll have an opportunity to come up to the mic and say what you want to say. We'll take a minute pause. If you could please respect the room, have a chance to speak, you will have a chance to speak. You got it? Are you done? Thanks, everyone, for your patience. We're going to turn it back over to Simon to continue with the presentation. Please quiet, hear you, and this can be recorded so you can watch it forever.
You ready? Okay. So here's a breakdown on how CHPC arrived at the 969 verified responses. And just to give you a little bit of an example of the quality assurance functions that they provided. So overall, they received 1,183 different surveys. They went through the NYCHA rent roll. So they had all information about every household and every authorized resident who was on the lease. They made sure that everybody who submitted a survey actually lived at one of the 4 developments. And then so doing that function, that got them down to 1,157 responses. And then looking closer at that number, there were a number of duplicates. So sometimes a respondent may have filled out a survey twice. Maybe they submitted a survey in the beginning and then they resubmitted at the end. Maybe there was some confusion and they did a paper survey and then they decided to do an electronic survey submission. So those discrepancies were reconciled. If 2 responses were submitted by the same person, but they were conflicting responses, they discounted them both. They did not count them. Where the same person submitted 2 responses that were identical, they just counted them as 1. So doing that kind of a process got them to the 969 verified survey responses. Next slide. Here's a little bit of a breakdown of the numbers by campus. So as we know, Fulton is where we are today. Elliot Chelsea is comprised of 3 developments, Elliot, Chelsea, and Chelsea Addition. And so you can see here starting on the left, the total number of residents over the age of 18 who are on the lease at each campus, shown together with the total number of surveys that were submitted at each campus. So what you can see here is that at Fulton, we received 476 surveys. At Elliot Chelsea, we received 493 surveys. So the rate of participation across both campuses was pretty consistent, which is really good news. Each campus had a participation rate between 28 and 29%, together averaging out to 29%. Now, continuing down the line, moving from left to right, we are showing the total number of households at each campus, 911 households, occupied households at Fulton, 1,053 occupied households at Elliot Chelsea, and in the column just to the right from there, the total number of households from which we received at least one survey response. So again, relatively consistent numbers, 329 unique households participated from Fulton, 396 unique households participated from Elliot Chelsea. That translated to an average of 37% across both campuses, very even participation from both a population, an individual, and a household perspective. Next slide. So this is the last slide. This breaks down the survey responses by campus and combined. So you can see starting at the top, we're showing the number of households, the number of respondents that submitted or identified a preference for rehabilitation of existing units. Of that 476 surveys that were received from Fulton, 182 people identified rehabilitation as their priority, while 294 identified new construction / full replacement of existing units as their priority. So at Fulton houses, 62% identified new construction as their desired path against 38%, which identified rehabilitation. And this is the precise language that was actually used on the survey as well. Just wanted to point that out. At Elliot Chelsea houses, again, similar number of survey responses submitted, 493. 237 people identified rehabilitation as their priority, compared to 256 responses identified new construction, full replacement as their preference. So by a smaller margin at Elliot Chelsea compared to Fulton, 52% of those who submitted responses at Elliot Chelsea did identify new construction as their preference. So looking at the total results combined, again, 969 unique verified submissions that were received. 419 people identified rehabilitation as their priority. That represents 43% across both campuses, whereas 550 people identified new construction full replacement as their preference. 57% of all survey responses indicated a preference for new construction across both campuses. Okay, that concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. So you think, but let me just at the mic, if you have something to say, and you'll have 2 minutes. And then we'll call up the next person. And at the end, Simon might respond to some general questions, but we're going to keep track of all the questions and respond. We're not going to be able to get to every question tonight, probably. So we will follow up, though. Does anybody want to?
So I'll ask if anybody wants to speak and raise a question or an issue, please approach the microphone. You'll be given 2 minutes, and we ask that you give us your name and address so we know where you live. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lydia Andre. I live at 352 West 20th Street. I'm here representing the 300 West 20th Street Block Association and the community that you left out of your community survey. For those of you who don't realize it, rezoning isn't just an issue for residents. It's an issue for the community at large. We'd also like to try to understand how we got from the working group RFP to this survey. Where are the missing steps? Also, we feel strongly that the lack of the word demolition in any of the survey documents is problematic, to say the least. And I hope that the community board will support the concept that people who live on this campus are not the only community members in Chelsea. Where are all your meetings for us? Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Next.
Hi, I'm Miguel Acevedo, the TA president here at Robert Fulton Housing. First and foremost, I want to thank the community board for actually having this meeting so we can put this survey behind us. Because it's been months and months that the community and the board and myself and the residents been wanting this to be public. And now we're fortunate to have it public. And I appreciate NYCHA being as honest as possible, because I can guarantee you everything that was said on that film or on that screen was what was done. NYCHA, Essence, and Related gave every single opportunity for the residents to participate in this process to make sure we knew what we were getting. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. If you want to just step up, we can, and if people want to just line up, they will move things along for us.
Hello, my name is Deidre, okay, and I live in Fulton Houses. The way y'all are presenting this, y'all are lumping us all together. Chelsea is one thing and Fulton is another. I came straight from the streets. I was homeless, crackhead, abandoned buildings, all of that. Okay, I've been here for 32 years. And my question is kind of twofold, okay? If y'all decide to demolition, okay, what's gonna happen when something breaks down in our apartment? Will we have to pay for that? Because right now, we don't have to pay for none of that. Okay, so my concern is, I'm 62 years old, I'm about to be a senior citizen. This is my last stop. I felt like when I got this in 1992, feet first with a toe tag. I don't have another option. I don't want to live anywhere else. This is a good neighborhood. This is a good community. Y'all are trying to take something from us that the rich people that look down on the building and say, oh, that's an eyesore or whatever. You know what I'm saying? We're the ones that help you do what you do. We cook, we clean for y'all. Come on. Keep it real with us. Okay? At the end of the day, I know what it feels like to be homeless. Okay? Tell me the God's honest truth. Don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining. That's all I'm saying.
My name is Amelia Martinez. I live at 419 West 17th Street. I have been following this whole packed presentation. Oh, well, my voice carries. I don't think I need this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Again, I asked to speak into the microphone so people online can hear as well.
Okay, I've been following it. All the packets that were said to have been left with the tenants were with the tenants. People, I saw them in the garbage. They don't want to be bothered. They throw it to the side. You know what? Everyone has a voice. And in that respect, we've all got a voice, all of us. But it's not what you say, it's how it's being said. We do not need to belittle one another. I have every one of the documents that he said was given to the tenants, I have in this folder. I attend meetings. I make my own minutes. My neighbors work, so a lot of the times they're not available to come to a meeting. I even go, you know, I go to their apartment, I let them know what's going on, but that's my floor. You know, I don't know what other people do. But it's a sad state of affairs when you start hearing things like, I heard, they said. I started taping meetings. And one time in the lobby, it was, I heard, they said, and I turned on the tape and said, Tell me when to stop it when you get to I heard and they said. You know what? You have to be willing to listen objectively also. You know, look at both sides of it. I'm 65 years old. Like she said, this is my last stop. I'm not going anywhere. When I moved here, I love the diversity of the community, not only
Okay, thank you, that's fine.
ethnic-wise, but economically.
Thank
So-
you.
Anyone who's ever invested anything,
I'm sorry, name and address into the microphone, please.
I'm Bennett Freeman. I live in Hudson Yard, in Penn South. My neighborhood. I've known people in the project for years. Number one, anybody who's ever bought a stock or real estate knows it's always a gamble. There's no guarantee that what you propose is going to happen. You revealed a bias today in this presentation. You showed a building looking wonderful. You didn't show any question about whether that building, that's a fantasy. That picture is not a reality. The reality in today's world is very shaky economically. The whole real estate industry is shaking. Revenue is under attack now for the first time in 50 years. There are demonstrations arising from tenants and from even the construction workers' unions. The future of this investment is full of peril. There has been no due diligence in all of your documents saying, well, every investment has risk. What are the risks in this investment? They're very great. Commercial real estate is never going to return, ever. And a big part of their money is in that. You are putting the fate of this whole community in a shaky investment.
Thank you.
Hi, Jacqueline Lara, Fulton Houses. These buildings are fixable. Listen, not too long ago, we had a meeting and the C line in 419, he came with a bunch of papers, tell you all the tickets he made, right? So they wrote to, what's her name? The chairwoman. That C line is fixed. They are so happy. So these buildings are fixable. It's a bunch of crap. And your survey is a bunch of crap too, sir. But besides that, I just want to keep my home. My home is 110% good. And anybody can come and see it. There's nothing wrong with my home. Don't fix what's not broken, okay? Just all I gotta say. You.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Selinette Miranda. The majority of us
Sorry, so where do you live? Thank you.
in the Elliot building. The majority of the FEC tenants never chose Brad, and certainly did not choose demolition. We were forced into a PAC conversion and later forced into accepting demolition. The demolition proposal was based on a working group that nobody knows about. The 2019 working group is on file and available to the public, but this other working group of hand-selected tenants is nowhere to be found. Who were the people involved? What was discussed? Where can we find the documents that discussed and concluded demolition? We need to see the evidence. Speaking of evidence, I see why NYCHA took so long to show us the survey results. They wanted to conceal vital information. The PAC survey that NYCHA gave to elected officials to justify demolition excluded important numbers. It excluded that 3,388 were the amount of eligible voters. It excludes that only 27% participated and 73% did not participate. As a matter of fact, out of desperation, NYCHA rounded out the numbers and to make their numbers appear higher, as they've been leading us on to believe. Most important, they excluded that only 16% of eligible voters chose demolition. You must know that 84% are against demolition.
This includes all eligible voters, those that participated and those that did not. That's a robust amount of people. The only numbers that you see on the survey are the ones that favor NYCHA. They took the 27% that participated and converted to 100% without the explanation. It's manipulative, but I'm not surprised. This is not the first time.
Thank you, Slim.
My name is Mary Jones. I live 419 West 17th Street. I've been coming to this meeting way before it got even bigger. At the very beginning, I moved here 7 years ago, and I have been going to these meetings. Now, as far as who signed what, there was a lot of people signed things. I even went myself, not going to us because there's a lot of people that do work. They don't have time. They can't get to this meeting. And most of them that I did go knock on that door, they want the demolition. Now, my point is this. Everybody have the right to feel the way they want to feel. But at the end of the day, if we don't act like adults and listen to each other so we can come to a conclusion, we're going to stay in this situation. We need to learn how to listen to one another and speak when you need to speak, but on time and not to belittle anyone. Because everybody has their own opinion. You know what I'm saying? And as far as people building, I lived here, I came here 7 years ago, and guess what? I have not once had somebody come fix my apartment. You know who fixed my apartment? Me. Okay? And I'm just tired of everybody acting like children. You know, we discipline our kids to be better than this. Why can't we show example? Set example. You know, it's sad. You don't have to want it. You can have it. But let's get to a conclusion because I'm tired of hearing this nonsense. And even the people that the other residents, we can come together as one. We don't have to do this all the time. It's ridiculous. I mean, it makes me sick. Usually I'm sick of my voice, you know, but I mean, things that don't make sense. That's my point.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alexa Cruz and I live in Chelsea. And I've been living here since 1969. I don't want to vote because if they rigged it once, they'll rig it again. And I want them to save Section 9. And I don't know what happened to those 70 employees that they were caught robbing from the tenants. What's going on with that? Why can't they follow up on us and not Rat Pat? We don't need Rat Pat because it's going to expire within 1 to 20 years and people are going to be out in the street. We don't need that. We have to be begging you to help us and you don't listen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mi nombre es Daniel Ramírez. Vivo en el 401 West de la 16 calle. Yeah. Vivo en la 16 calle.
I live on 17th Street.
Mi pregunta es,
My question is,
¿cómo es que un 30% que votó,
what is it when 30% vote?
entonces, con un 30% nos quieren quitar la vivienda por haber un grupito de corruptos?
So it's only 30% that want to leave. Why is that the majority?
Ya, por un grupo de corruptos que están cogiendo dinero por debajo de la mesa y no nos está protegiendo a nosotros como, no se ría.
So I'm sorry.
No,
So he's saying, no, what he's saying is, have those people gotten money under the table?
Quieren destruir una comunidad de 12 vidas para meternos en 3 vidas. ¿Cómo es la lógica que vivamos en 12 la comunidad?
So this is a community, not just 3 buildings, but in all the buildings. Are we in one community together?
Entonces nos quieren meter entre 2,000 y pico de personas.
We can't say that 1/3 is 1,000, over 1,000 people.
Yo me pregunto, ¿quién es que está para defender a nosotros los inquilinos? Que no
Who's
aparece-
going to defend us, the tenants here?
Entonces, lo que yo le pido es que mi comunidad,
I want to know about our community,
donde mis hijos viven,
where my children live.
No destruyan nuestro Biden, no demolición.
Don't destroy our buildings, don't do demolition.
Que nosotros tenemos el mismo derecho de vivir como ustedes viven.
Because we have the same rights to live like everybody else.
Gracias. Pasen buenas noches.
Welcome. Name and address again, please.
My name is Renee. I'm a resident of the Elliot houses. Was I mistaken that you said March 12th, the packet was given to everyone? Okay, I'm glad you corrected yourself because I was about to do that for you. So that's part of the problem. We're always correcting people, making sure things are said properly. Now, it's lovely that they did it, but why did it take 11 months? This was an easy ask. We asked Citizen Housing Planning Council. We were able to get it. This could have been so easy, but they made it hard. Why did they do it? You need to start asking those questions. And as Selena said, it's only 16% of those who participated. So why was that? Did they not understand? You said everybody in all the languages spoken. That's impossible. There are more languages spoken in this development in Fulton and Elliot than the ones you've done. So you have a problem, and there's a big problem. What is the majority of the people they want? You said reconstruction. Why didn't you say demolition? Answer those questions. I'm sure you're going to write it down and come with an answer. I'm sure you'll pivot to everything I said, but we need to really think. It was a simple thing to do. Why not?
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Roberto Rodriguez. I've resided at 420 West 19th Street since 1983. Before that, my father, who with my sister, who had Down syndrome, resided there for about 4 or 5 years before he passed away. I inherited the apartment because I was the only guardian capable of taking care of my sister at that point. Now, the thing is that we're going to I'll make this very short. Public housing was built in the Depression. The United States had a depression in the 30s. It's the worst, and the worst may come yet, according to all the prognosticators about the economy in this country, who are really looking at the real facts here. So I'll make that a point. It was built during the Depression. Where did they get the money? That's a good question, isn't it? Now, the fact is that for a long time, New York State has been returning something on the order of $14 billion. It's called the stock transfer tax, from a penny to a five. Sometimes it's called a penny stock or the five stack. Why are they returning that to Wall Street since 1980? Now, that's 14 billion, which is a conservative. It could be up to $32 billion. It's hard to say, but at least 14 billion would go a long way towards fixing and repairing everything that's wrong with the NYCHA buildings. Bart Schwartz, the independent monitor, condemned the NYCHA for their incompetence, their corruption, their negligence. This is not an accident, because I can understand that when I moved in 1983, and maybe 2 to 3 times the number of maintenance people who kept our buildings clean, safe, and practically eat off the floors. And then they started coming with the cutbacks, which started when Big Mac, the Municipal Assistance Corporation, the banks basically said, just like the mafia, pay me first. And this is what has occurred since then. It has never stopped. It's affected the school system. But I'll make it even very short. Phil Stack has introduced from the 110th Assembly District to get that money back from Wall Street. Get it back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Philip Sherry. I live in Fulton Houses, 420 West 19th. What I want to say is the 30% people who voted is about average for any other vote that we've ever had in this city. City elections, federal elections, whatever. An average voting group is around 30%. The rest of them, if you don't vote, shut up. You didn't do your duty. The rest of it is also, I'm supposed to be in an ADA compliant apartment. It's not ADA compliant. it would probably cost somewhere between $100,000 and $250,000 to convert my apartment to ADA compliant. I mean, I need a lot of equipment to stay alive. And this place isn't helping me that much. I want to thank the board for showing up, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Ramiro Morales. I'm at 419 West 17th Street, apartment 16C.
Excuse me, can we have some quiet in the back of the room so speakers can be heard? Selena, thank you.
I had an issue about a year and a half ago with no hot water. It took me 7 emails to email the chairwoman to get the job done after 2 years, and I finally got some hot water. 2 weekends ago, it was raining. So everybody knows there was a lot of rain. The elevators were raining. There was rain in the elevator. Nobody could take the elevator. A lot of people had to walk up the stairs. This past weekend, it was very windy. I had to embrace my windows in order for me to stop the shaking of all the windows in the apartment. So my question is that if we're going to get this demolition done, what is taking so long? If we're not going to get it done, when is the decision? Everybody's in doubt. If we are going to get it done, we're not going to get it done. What's stopping us? What's stopping it from getting it done? What's stopping it of getting it not done? I think it's a simple question that anybody should answer, if you have the answer. That's my.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Next.
Hi, my name is Mary McGee. I'm a former resident of Fulton House.
And you live where now?
I don't live in New York anymore. I moved because my daughter was attacked, and the guy is serving 25 years now in jail. That's the reason I moved out of Fulton, and I fought him. I've always been concerned about what's going on here. And I've always contacted the community board, contacted elected officials. I've spoken to NYCHA, like every resident in this room could have done. But it's how you treat people and speak to them. You have to be respectful to be taken seriously. You have to accept other people's opinions, which is okay because not all of us see on the same page. But we need that respect. The thing about this survey, or whatever you want to call it, I've attended these meetings. They were well attended. It was people's choices, the residents' choices not to vote, because they felt if they didn't vote, it wasn't going to happen. Just like with any general election, it's your choice to be heard. You didn't take that opportunity and now you want to fight it. That's the problem. Instead of fighting this, how many people in this room that are against this sat and spoken to Legal Aid Society? I have. How many people spoken to an elected official, which I'm a former resident? I have. I like facts. I'm not gonna go by he said, she said. I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna do my research, which every person in this room has the opportunity to do. But they choose not to and listen to the he say, she said. Let's do what's right for the residents. Let's do what's right for the community. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mary.
I want to thank the community board for having
Sorry,
me.
name and address,
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry. How you doing? My name is Lenny Rosado. My parents moved in here in 1967. I was actually 3 years old.
Which
I
campus?
live here in the Fulton campus. I live in 400 West 17th Street. I used to live in 419, but then we moved to 400. I just want to speak a few things. I've been hearing the same stuff from a lot of people over the last 6 months. One is, here in Fulton, we do have buildings that have no problems. Where I live, I actually don't have too many problems with plumbing and stuff like that, except for the elevators. They break down every so often. But the high rises, because I got about 75 tenants on my contact list because I am the TA vice president. So a lot of tenants do reach out to me. 420, 419, 418 have a lot of issues with the elevators.
At times, all 3 elevators are down. We have tenants staying outside for half an hour, 2 to 3 hours, so somebody comes to fix the elevators. A lot of heating issues during the winter time, which is crazy. They call me, they contact me, which I don't mind, but I always tell them, well, call 718, you know? But it's just not, you know, as a community, we're a community, you'll live together. We have to be concerned about the other neighbors, not just ourselves. Like I said, I don't have a problem that much in my building, but my tenants that live in 418, 419, 420, they got a lot of issues. So this is not about me, it's about we, the community. So there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. The second thing I want to bring up about is, we've been going at this, I've been part of the working group since 2019. We've been going at this from 2019 till now. Yes, we had the RFP, was just renovate the buildings. A year ago or so, NYCHA related came up with the new plan, the new redevelopment. I heard it. I'm not gonna lie, I'll be honest, it was a little sketchy, but then it was okay. But we need to move forward because I want to live and enjoy which route we're going.
Thank you, Lenny.
Alan Cohen, 415 West 23rd Street. I'm concerned about the health impacts of this project. I heard this is an 8-year plan of construction, including demolition. There are schools in the neighborhood, little kids, old men like myself, who have respiratory illnesses and don't want to be breathing in particulates every single day for 8 years. Using the word reconstruction rather than demolition it's a convenient euphemism, and it's definitely to your advantage there. Other than the health issues, I'm also concerned that this is all just about valuable property and taking away land that belongs to people that are needy and people that need a place to live. And this is all being done just to increase the property values of rich people. So I also don't understand why the neighborhood wasn't consulted with this survey that you did, and why we didn't have any input. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Hi, my name is John Mudd. I'm with the Midtown South Community Council, and I live on 38th Street between 8th and 9th. We've been coalescing with a large
I'm
group.
sorry, can we have quiet in the room, please? Quiet in the room to hear the speakers.
We've been coalescing with a lot of NYCHA folks. We've had forums, we've had meetings over this. CDRC has had meetings. We're pretty clear on what's going on, and I think we all know this is a land grab. And pure and simple, and that's what it is. They're stripping away everything, all the assets from the public. I mean, we're up there fighting for a right to counsel up in Albany. We're fighting for good cause, and they water down these bills. And I think, Joe, you had, we were at a meeting not too long ago, and they wanted to change the plan. They wanted to start thinking about a Wind was there. He wanted to do a whole new thing. He wanted to get rid of cut down the housing in half. Now, we've been there with the 2008 with the hotels when they flowered in Midtown all over the city, and they squashed a lot of tenanted buildings. And then they go to Hudson Yards. We've seen what they've done with Hudson Yards. And now Bernardo. Now, you guys have supported Bernardo. I mean, you fought against Bernardo. You fought with us on Bernardo. You didn't want to see them take it over and squash a lot of housing there. I mean, you cannot You cannot let this go. This is the same thing. This is all related. You got, and they're gonna keep going, and they're foaming at the mouth for this property. And we need to protect your community board. We need to protect the public. And I implore you to stand behind them.
Thank you, John. Again, a reminder to folks in the room, please, it's very difficult to hear speakers when there's chatter. So please be respectful of the speakers and let's listen. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gladys. Hello, my name is Gladys. I live on 419 West 17th Street. I just wanted to say I have respect for everyone's opinion. I do understand that some people have issues and some people don't. I moved in not too long ago, Hurricane Sandy, which was a struggle. I spent a lot of thousands of dollars in my apartment, okay, for me to leave that. Whether we do reconstruction, demolition, whatever it is that we decide to do, I'm not leaving. When I moved here, I chose to live at Fulton Houses. I'm not getting any younger, and the only way I'm leaving Fulton is in a body bag. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Next.
Oh, hi, everyone. Marnie Halassa. I just wanted to.
Sorry, Marnie, address, please.
Sorry.
Where do you live?
Oh, I live in Chelsea, North Chelsea. I don't, yeah.
I'm sorry, what's the street?
34th Street, 34th between 9th and 10th.
11, thank you.
Okay. But I think it's interesting, we keep on talking about this so-called survey, but people forget that Fulton Houses already did their own sort of vote, where 60% voted against demolition and privatization. Jackie, you remember all that? So I don't understand, like that was part of the working group. Why don't we talk about that? Why are we so focused on like a fake survey that was done by actually like basically a real estate lobbying firm? So that's one point. Second point is, why didn't Miguel Acevedo, why did Miguel hire attorney Arthur Schwartz to protect his own Section 9 tenants at Fulton? I think that's very, very telling. All of a sudden now he's scared for his tenants. And then this is a question for Jamar Alexander. Why doesn't he grandfather in the Section 9 leases? That's actually possible. And that's something that I would hope that the community board would support to protect low-income people of color, seniors, disabled, people that really can't advocate for themselves. So I just want to say that because I would hope that you guys would support that because it seems like you're turning your backs on them. And also, one more thing. Well, that's it. But those are three very important points. Thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing? My name is Alicia Martinez. I live in 428, and I've been living there 35 years since I was like a teenager. And my concern and my worry is about the building. My building, I think, is a really strong building, and it would be a shame to destroy it. I wouldn't like to have demolition. Like recently we have an earthquake, I didn't feel nothing. So I think it's a really strong building. I also have a fire like a few years ago, right next to my apartment. And the fire did not went to my apartment. So I believe our building, well, at least my building where I live, is a really strong one. So I'm afraid that these new buildings that they're gonna do, the material is not gonna be the same way. That's my fear. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Margaret Hunt. I live in the first building y'all want to take, 401 West 19th. And she said what I want to say. When you build it, you're not going to build it to last. I don't care what you do. It's no way that you can build it like these buildings they have now. You can barely get through the walls to fill the beam. You can barely get through it. Now, an opinion whether you do it or not, because you're gonna do what you want anyway. And this is what I'm trying to tell them, whether they upset, you're gonna take it if you want anyway. But they really upset because when y'all go to build these, you have to think about fires, theft, or anything that's going on with the materials that you use to build with. There's a building they built over here not too long ago, and they just threw it up. And they have rats, mice, everything else. And it's not fair to them if you just go take theirs and just go and put what you want or offer them something and then turn around and say, we can't do this. They're not gonna want that. They want the truth. You have to give them the truth or you're gonna have this problem again. Or either one. So that's just my opinion.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anyone else stand up in the room to speak, so we're going to move to the online participants. We have committee members who are online with their hands up. We're going to call on committee members after public.
Yeah, you want me to bring over
So
the two?
committee members with their hands up, we're not calling on you right now. We'll call on you after public comment.
So we're bringing over Carol Out and Milagros Lugo.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead. Give me an address, please.
I live at 324 West 20th, and I am block president of my block association. I too would like to know, really two questions. At what point after the RFP was out and plans were submitted based on the very good work of the working group, at what point and why was there a pivot? And if there is a pivot, why is there not going to be another RFP? My second question is, as a member of the broader Chelsea community, I don't think we have been consulted or considered or even acknowledged in the plans for NYCHA. What happens at NYCHA, you know, I'm not a NYCHA resident, and I strongly believe that they have a strong voice over what they want to do. But I have been a Chelsea resident since 1978. This will be the largest project that has ever happened in Chelsea. And I'm a senior citizen, and it will be for the rest of my senior citizen years. And I think that the community, the broader community, needs to be brought into the discussion also. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
The second person from the public declined, so we can move to the committee if you'd like.
So we're done with public comment. We're going to close the public. Is there anybody else in the room before we close public comment and we move to committee members? Not seeing anybody come up. We're going to move to committee discussion now. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the candor and frankness and participation of so much. So Simon is going to start with some comments.
Hello. Great. Thank you. So I appreciate all the comments. I was taking notes, and I'm sure if there's anything else that the committee would like me to elaborate on or clarify for the audience or the board, I'm happy to do so. So just reading through some of the things that I took down, let me hone in on just a few points. Certainly a lot of fear around displacement as a result of this project. I talked a little bit about how this project would still be conducted under the PACT program. Nobody is going to be expected to move away from their home. And if you do, you would have a right to return. So the way that the project has been devised, 94% of all households would only move once, directly into their new apartment after it's constructed. Only a small portion of the existing families here would have to move temporarily to another apartment, and they'll have a choice in terms of where they want to go, whether that's on campus to another unit that we fix up or offsite in the community to a different building. Once their building is constructed, they would have a right to return. These are rules that are enshrined in the HUD regulations that we have to abide by. anyone who does have to temporarily move would sign a temporary move agreement that we've used at other PAC developments, because when we do rehabilitation as well, sometimes residents do have to temporarily move while we renovate their home. So while the nature of this project has changed, the mechanics of it in terms of temporary relocation and the right to return are still the same. We're going to use those same tools. That temporary move agreement really codifies your rights in terms of who's responsible for paying for what, in terms of moving and packing expenses, when your new building, your new home will be ready, and all the support that you'd be provided if needed to find that temporary home and return. In terms of the lease, so a lot of talk about the lease and concerns that the lease is not going to be a Section 9 lease, not going to be a strong lease. So I wanted to speak about that for a moment. The lease that everybody eventually will sign with the new property manager is the same lease that we use at all of our other PAC developments. This lease was crafted by NYCHA in collaboration with the Legal Aid Society. In fact, we're reviewing it again right now because periodically we update it, and we receive feedback from community advocates, including legal aid, who's providing comments on it so that we can continue to refine it and make it stronger. But it's modeled off the public housing Section 9 lease. So the lease that everybody will get is basically the same as the Section 9 lease. There was a question about, can we grandfather it in? That's kind of exactly what we're doing. The way that this program has been set up at the federal level is to grandfather all of your rights and protections in, and the lease is really importantly what locks it in. There was mention also about good cause. So I want to say this lease is a pro-tenant lease. There's good cause protections in there. It automatically renews every year. You cannot be displaced except for criminal activity or for extreme negligence in paying rent. So again, good cause protections, very strong pro-tenant lease, same as the NYCHA public housing lease. There has to be a new lease signed with the property manager on site in order for us to actually obtain that new Section 8 subsidy. That Section 8 subsidy, again, is more powerful than the public housing subsidy we receive. And that's what allows us so that's what makes this whole thing. I'm not going to. It's on our website. The lease is on our website. So a few questions as well about the construction process, concerns about the impact in the community from many years of what will be ongoing construction. So there was also a comment about, in addition, about is this actually going to happen? What's taking so long? So related to that point, yes, the project is moving forward. We're in the process of environmental review right now. So very specifically, environmental review is going to be looking at all of those impacts. What is the impact to air quality, shadows, transportation, circulation, historic preservation, environmental? All of these things are going to be analyzed based on the project as it's proposed and conceived right now. And there will be a very lengthy environmental impact statement that will be produced and shared with the public. And members of the public will have an opportunity to read it and comment and provide feedback before it's finalized. We recently launched the environmental review process with what's known as the scoping process. So that is really the beginning where people can tell us what you want us to be looking at as we conduct that review, again, so that we can make sure we're assessing all of those potential impacts. In terms of construction quality, we're going to be working closely with the partner team and with our residents to design these buildings. So right now, they're very loosely designed kind of shapes, and those will turn into buildings. We need to think about what's going to be inside those buildings, what level of finishes and materials and resources and amenities do we want inside those buildings? What's the plan for security? How about the public spaces? What kinds of things do we want there? What should the facade of the building look like? These are all issues that we're going to be addressing together with our residents as we design the project. So there is certainly a lot of work to do in terms of also making sure that it's a high quality, long lasting building. Anything else that you want to with that practice? Okay, I'll stop there and we can take questions.
Milagros, I'll bring you. Milagros, you just have to unmute and then you can speak. Milagros, do you hear me? You have to unmute yourself to speak. I don't know. She's not on the phone. Okay, we're going to bring you back and we'll keep on moving ahead. Sure, Milagros, if you'd like to send me an email, you can always email me at the community board office. And it's the email is the letter jbodine@cb.nyc.gov.
Okay, thanks everybody for all your great questions. Dave Holoka. Go ahead. Oh,
Hello?
Yeah. Put it on the mic. Can you put it on the mic? I don't know if it'll work.
Issues, but thank you for tonight. Thank you for the info. Can you hear me?
Yeah, they could hear you.
You want to say what she's saying, maybe?
This is in regards to Simon does not have accurate numbers. The paper copy survey was not allowed to leave the guilds and to be filled out and submitted right then and there because I asked one of the ladies. She said I could not take the paper. My mother, she's a senior, and the majority of the survey was to do a QR code, when in fact, in a majority of the senior communities, most of the community tenants did not participate because it was on a QR code and no one never answered the phone. So those numbers, please, those numbers are not guaranteed, as to one of the gentlemen that said. In regard to how I feel as a person of 20 years of construction, these buildings do not show any signs to demolish. How many old buildings in New York City do you think need to be demolished? And if you want to ask us to give you a reason why we should keep our homes, please take a look. Please tell me how would it feel if you were in that situation. We've been living here since 1985 and my apartment is gorgeous. My community is gorgeous. I see what's going around. It's just obvious, but we're not going to be kicked out as trash. So thank you for hearing me. I really appreciate it and have a great night.
Hi, Simon. As it's been mentioned, the survey and the options of demolition and new construction are a very clear break with the RFP that was hammered out with the Chelsea NYCHA working group. Can you tell us where those options came from?
So the RFP that was originally released included opportunity for a range of responses, including new construction and rehabilitation, not for demolition. As that was a really key point of discussion among the working group participants. And there was a desire expressed with the working group, which we followed, and resident leaders participated in that working group process to avoid demolition at all costs. At the time, we had estimated that the cost of rehabilitating these properties was about $366 million. That was based off a physical needs assessment that was done in prior to 2016. And as the partner team started to get on site, conduct their evaluation and inspections, investigations of the property, that number, 366 million, was found to be woefully inadequate in terms of allowing us to address the physical needs of the property. And at the same time, NYCHA itself, independent of the PACT program, was conducting their 5-year physical needs assessment. So every year we conduct our own independent audit of the physical needs at our properties and had been doing so in the background, including for these developments. Our assessment was that the physical needs of these properties had ballooned to just about $1 billion, which is consistent, as it happens, with what the partner team had found as well. So, you know, those numbers, though they were dramatic in terms of the increase, were not inconsistent with our own estimate.
Yeah, are you familiar with the examination by the news outlet The City in July of last year that found that actual renovation costs consistently come in lower and usually much lower than NYCHA's estimates when comprehensive rehabilitation is done by PAC-RAD private sector developers? It's because the unit costs that NYCHA uses don't take into account economies of scale. They in fact ranged from $124,000 to $384,000, well below the average unit cost of $485,000 that NYCHA estimated for apartments across its system based on its physical needs assessments. This was true for all 9 such projects in 2023, and it's because NYCHA's estimates don't take into account savings from renovating all the apartments in a building versus just one. PAC-RAD developers also have greater skill in negotiating material costs and more efficient workforce, which will further lower its costs. I'm an architect, and it's just implausible to me that it could cost that much to renovate one of these buildings, and we haven't been given anything to substantiate it. You know, maybe if there was a serious structural flaw, but we're talking about 4 sets of buildings. If you count the Chelsea addition as one of a set, that were built over 20 years, designed by different architects and built at different times. You know, what's behind that? What could possibly cause the price to go to almost 2.5 times what NYCHA estimated?
Well, so many of the reasons you cited are exactly the reason that we do the PACT program, because the private sector can do the work better, faster, more cost effectively than NYCHA. So I absolutely agree with that general assessment. I haven't found it to be true that the cost of doing our comprehensive repairs are lower than what the NYCHA P&A has found. My understanding is actually we invest a lot more than the P&A, because the P&A just examines like-for-like replacement, whereas with PACT, we go above and beyond the like-for-like. We do the full suite of comprehensive repairs and upgrades. But I can take a look and provide feedback on that report.
You know what
Either way, I'll just say quickly that when this assessment had been done, I think everybody can agree that the cost had ballooned. And so there was a conversation at that point together with NYCHA and the partner team, as well as resident leaders, to think about what are we going to do. This project is going to be very challenging. We're still ready to roll up our sleeves and move forward with the rehab, but there's also another opportunity to think through rebuilding. And so those options were brought to the table, and in discussions with resident leaders, they wanted us to bring it to the community. And so that's that process that we undertook that I described tonight.
Okay, I have a few more specific questions about the survey itself. You don't give any breakdown of how many residents voted for 1A versus 1B. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the vast majority, so you're referring to the difference between the two new construction options. One was with the rezoning, a denser, faster construction timeline, and one was within the existing zoning or land use framework, which would have taken longer and been of a slightly lower scale. So the results were that 80% of respondents who selected that opted for the rezoning, the quicker, faster option. But I didn't include it on there just because there's so many different stats. I can make that available.
So the great majority of those who voted for new construction actually voted for the rezoning option.
Correct.
Were they made aware that that was contingent on ULURP and might not be something that could be delivered?
Yeah, that was clear in the process, absolutely.
Okay. You know, choice 1A has the obvious advantage of placing residents in new homes 1 to 3 years sooner. You know, was there any timeline? There is no timeline given for option 2, which is renovation. Why was that?
There should have been a timeline included. I'm pretty sure it was. We can go back, but Jamal Adams from Essence is here. And
it wasn't on the survey form.
I'm sorry?
It's not on the survey form.
Oh, there were no timeframes included on the survey itself. That was included in the packet that we distributed that really summarized the implications of each one.
Okay, and if, as related to estimates showed, it's infeasible to do renovation because it's cheaper to do new construction, why was there even a renovation option on the survey?
So the question was, if it's infeasible to do rehabilitation, why was it even included on the survey? So nobody said it's infeasible. If it were infeasible, we wouldn't have put it on the survey. But the fact was that the cost of rehabilitating and investing in the existing buildings was such that we could have spent the same amount in providing brand new facilities for our residents. And again, this is to address some structural issues with our properties.
What are the structural issues?
The structural issues being that some are served by just one elevator.
That's not a structural issue.
Some don't, well, yeah. It would be cost prohibitive to install a new elevator to the outside of the building, for example.
Okay, I want you
the
to imagine this.
configuration of the units are also not accessible. So there's different kinds of amenities and benefits that the new construction can bring. So those were some of the things that we talked about in addition to the cost.
Okay, let's say you're taking down one of the buildings. Let's say it's a 25-story Fulton Houses tower. You send crews in, they take out all the appliances, the cabinets, the finishes, the flooring, the partitions, they completely gut the building. All that's left is the structure, the shell of the building, the fire stairs, and the foundation. Are you really going to tell us that it would be more expensive to put completely new systems, elevators, and apartments into that existing shell than to pay tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions, to tear down all of the buildings and then build new buildings with their own foundations, structural systems, and put the same new systems and apartments into that? How does that work? Can you explain that to us?
Sure. So yes, the answer is it would be more expensive to completely strip down a building and completely reconfigure it. I mean, some of the things that we consider are like, what is the best, most effective use of our dollars, right? We want to be able to get the most bang for the buck. Doing something like that is really not the way that we've been doing the program. And by doing something like that would trigger such a massive investment really had to make us think about what this project should be. You want to elaborate?
Dave, do you have any further questions on the survey?
Yeah, I have one more.
Last one, please.
On the survey, there's no option like a 2A and a 2B. There's no option for renovating that includes putting in new HVAC systems, washers, dryers, and dishwashers. That might have made it look competitive with the other ones. Why was there no option like that?
Sure. I also just want to introduce Jamar Adams from Essence Development, who is here and can help answer some of these questions. So We didn't give that level of detail in the new construction either. For new construction, it was just bigger, faster, or slower, smaller. We didn't go into the kind of detail of the kinds of, mechanical systems or other things. We just painted the broad brush. So we gave both options kind of consistent treatment.
Hi, my name is Jamar Adams. I'm the founder of Essence Development, which is one of the PAC partners. So you're asking the question, why didn't we have an option 2B or some additional options for the renovation? So again, to echo the point, the process that we went through to get to the 3 options that residents had was a process that was collaborative with the resident leadership. We sat down with them. We actually provided them multiple options on new construction, and we also provided them options on renovation. They wanted the options down to the 2 on new construction and the 1 for renovation. So again, we've tried to make sure that the residents have been a part of that process the entire time. And so therefore, the options that were ultimately selected to go on the survey were ultimately something that the resident leadership all chose. So.
Okay, anyone else have any questions on that side of the table?
The obvious question about survey is very clear, and I understand people didn't show up and they didn't vote for it, so you can't sort of keep making noise about why 30% showed up. And that's what we're actually basing all decisions on. So I'm not going to torture you with that, but my one quick question is when the scope changed remarkably, why was a new RFP not issued? And second question is, survey results are one part of the story, but when your NYCHA cost estimate was 360, whatever amount that was, and it doubled up to 1 billion, but that report was actually prepared by Related and not by NYCHA. You are telling us now that NYCHA also had their own such report done. Has that been shared with CD4? Or can it be shared with CD4?
Yeah, so the NYCHA physical needs assessment that shows a level of repair work that is consistent with what the partner team presented is a public document. I can share it if I haven't already, but I believe I have shared it with the community board. And it breaks down all the different components that would be going into that number. So I can absolutely make that available again. It is on our website as well. To the question about why wasn't a new RFP issued, well, the RFP that we did issue provided for changes in scope. The residents went through a process of selecting this team. I believe you know that this was actually the first development where we tried this new approach where resident leaders were actually the ones selecting the PACT partners. Whereas in the past, NYCHA was the one selecting the partners, introducing them to the residents and saying, work together. Here at Fulton, Elliot, Chelsea, the residents formed a committee. They were supported by advisory services, and they actually made the selection of Essence and Related. So, until we hear from the resident leaders saying, we want a new RFP, we want a new partner, that's not really something that, we're going to start looking into. But the fact of the matter is that we are able to make changes in the scope of a project based on the RFP that was released.
I'm not going to make it harder for you. I'm an architect myself. I'm an urban designer. I have participated in many, many RFPs. The moment the scope changes, if one person got the award and the scope has changed, I have the right to resubmit. So I don't quite understand. Are you telling us that you went to NYCHA residents and asked them for their opinion rather than actually engaging the wider community and of professionals who actually participate in the first scope? So why would that process not be sort of followed through?
Sure. Well, so this isn't a typical architect procurement process. We have a lot of flexibility in how we identify partners for RAD and Section 18 transactions. We do follow a very regimented process, and the RFP was designed to give us the flexibility to pivot if we need to pivot. Again, it is a partnership, and I mean that in the full force of that word. We have to work together. We rely on their expertise to investigate the buildings and put forward a proposal where we can negotiate and come to an agreement on the project. But this is a very, the team that we select through that process is, again, very deep bench of developers, contractors, property managers, service providers. So it's not like the typical, I'm going to hire you to do a very specific service. We're hiring them to conduct all of this analysis and work with us towards a project that we can implement.
Yeah, can I just? I'm not, okay, I do have a problem. You kind of just have to keep your mouth right up there. Yeah, okay. So I have a problem with the survey, the way it's described in the second. It sort of appears appealing, even though they're the same AC, washers. There's no folded, there's nothing to. So that seems to me to be intentional. I also have a problem. So I also have an issue with the RFP. I mean, I think that it completely changed from what it was originally. I don't understand how you can use the same RFP for a totally different project. I've never seen that before. And then the residents have an issue with the leases. I mean, you're really taking away section 9 and changing to section 8. A lot of them at the beginning, and I spoke to many since this started, did not know the difference. You now have everyone's attention. I think there should be another survey. I think the section 8 to section 9 is completely different. I just, there's so many issues with the way this was handled from the beginning. I think it should be started over, a new RFP. A new survey. Now that you have residents' attention, yeah, I really think this is, I think it's a land grab personally. I'm going to say that. I think it's a land grab.
So, I'll try to respond to your first comment. So your comment seemed to allude to the fact that we were trying to make the new construction look more attractive than the renovation. Well, again, it is just more attractive. Like it's not, we don't have to make it look one way or the other. The renovation was limited in the scope of work of what could be provided. That was what was conveyed to the residents in the multiple meetings that we had. It was conveyed to the residents the lack of accessibility would happen to have in the building with the major building systems, things of that nature. There were things that were going to get improved naturally in the renovation, fairly substantial. But certain aspects of it we would never be able to address. We would never be able to have the amount of amenity spaces in the renovation of the existing buildings that we have in the new construction. And so, yes, you know, the packages went out to the residents. We had multiple meetings with residents. We had a number of conversations, and we shared with them, you know, the plan that we were proposing.
Please do not yell out. Please respect the speakers when they're speaking, like everyone respected you when you were speaking.
Let me just also respond to the other part of the question. So I really just want to clarify this. These developments were transitioning to project-based Section 8, even under the working group plan. So there's no change from that part of that aspect of the project to where we are today. based on all of that work that we've been doing, I personally have attended dozens of meetings walking through the conversion process from Section 9 to project-based Section 8. The lease, the tenant protections, everything remains the same. So that aspect of the project does not change with this pivot to new construction.
Can I just, I'm going to keep my questions specific to the survey because that's the focus, but I'm just curious for my own benefit, maybe for the benefit of this group. You called, when you were talking about the survey and you're working through the results, you identified the survey as a temperature check. That's language you used. That to me is a strange way of thinking about something that has obviously triggered a lot of reaction. And so I guess I'm just wondering, was that the purpose of the survey? Was it a temperature check? Or were you seeking something else? Because you used it, and again, just by simply looking at some of the communications that NYCHA put out when this survey first went out, right? That it was a decision that the community made. Didn't sound like it came across as a temperature check. So I'm just curious as to a couple things. One, what was the value and purpose when this was originally conceptualized? I didn't quite understand that. Two, typically when people talk about surveys, they don't just start from the perspective of what were the results. They start by saying, let's talk about what statistically significant would look like. And I didn't hear that. Maybe I didn't hear that because the group that conducted the survey isn't here. I'm not sure. But I'd just like to know a little bit more in the background in terms of what the thinking was, what the purpose was. Was this intended to be a temperature check, or you were trying to get to something statistically significant? And by the way, I say all this with full awareness based on the data that I have seen, that these developments have significant challenges and issues that need to be addressed. I just want to be clear, this conversation is about the survey. So I want to understand where it's coming from, but that doesn't solve, none of this conversation about the survey doesn't solve the actual problems that we're talking about. But for clarity, just tell me where you're coming from and what the purpose and value was.
So the purpose, again, when we sat down with the resident leaders, primarily the TA boards of both Fulton, Chelsea, and Elliot, they conveyed to us a desire to want to investigate the new construction plan, right? Then after multiple meetings with them and NYCHA, we convened a larger meeting that included certain members from the community board. It included elected officials. I mean, hold on, let me finish my response. So I'm gonna respond to your question. So certain members of the community board elected all the elected officials from this area as well as their some of their representatives. It included some residents in that meeting. And so in that kind of large setting meeting that took place, we went through the options that were being discussed with residents, and the elected officials said this, look, we want to support the residents. Whatever the residents want to move forward with, we're going to support them. So residents said, we want to have a way to engage all the other residents. We want them to be able to, state how they feel about this, what their thoughts are, right? So then there was a conversation, again, additional conversations that followed up and said, okay, NYCHA said we want to engage through a survey with the residents. We brought that back to the elected officials and said, hey, look, this is the plan. We're going to have all these informational segments. We're going to do tours. And then we're going to engage the residents through a survey process, right? And the elected official says, yes, whatever the results are, right? And that's what we said. I stood up in all these meetings. I was the one that was speaking. Jonathan Gavale was there. So I know exactly what's happening. I said on multiple occasions, and any resident who's in here can attest to the fact that I said this. If they don't, they're not being truthful. I said, look, the whole point of this process is to determine what residents want, right? If it's 100 people who respond to this process, and 51 of them say they want rehab, we're going to do rehab. If 51 of them say they want new construction, we're going new construction. And so it was always the clear intent that it was going to be a process to engage as many residents as we possibly can. The elected officials said they wanted to support what the residents wanted to see happen. And that was what was taking place as a part of this survey. And that's why it all kind of went the way it went.
So I feel like we're getting into semantics now. I don't think anybody said this would be a statistically significant regression analysis or anything like that, but I think sharing the participation rate is a pretty significant participation compared to other processes like this. So, again, whether I said the word temperature check or other terminology, I did say that this would help determine the direction of the project, and that's consistent with what Jamar has said.
Hi, everybody. Jeffrey LaFrancois. I'm conflicted out of co-chairing and voting on this topic, but I am a committee member that's able to participate in the discussion. And so a couple of questions on the survey, and specifically to start. Okay. Everybody said to hold it closely, and now I am. And so here we are. Engagement. You talked about the packet that went out. Was that mailed to every resident?
Yes, it was hung on every door.
Hung
And it
on
was,
every door.
and as one of the meeting attendees pointed out, the slide is incorrect. I'll get you an updated presentation. It actually was mailed on May 12th.
Okay,
not
so
March 12th.
wait.
Oh,
The
I'm sorry, not
packet
mailed. It was door drop.
or the survey.
The packet with all of the information about the options and directions on how to complete the survey was door dropped
Okay,
on May 12th.
got it. Was anything mailed?
So
Hi, I have the mic, friends. I have the mic. Thank you. Was anything mailed to the tenants or was it only door dropped?
that was not mailed. It was put in a clear package in multiple languages, hung on every resident's door. We also put packages in Chelsea, the Elliot Center, as well as the Fulton Center for residents to pick up. We also put multiple packets with HOU who have locations both at Fulton and Chelsea. The packets don't actually have the paper survey. It only has the QR code in there for you to respond. You can go online from that perspective. But in addition to that, we had at HOU's office as well at Fulton Center, at Elliot Center, we had the paper copies that people could complete the survey. They could take them home. They could have other people complete the surveys within their family as well. So it was never a mail to their address with the package.
Got it. So they had it on their door. Separate from that outreach, you also did door knocking generally on the topic, or no? The only outreach was dropping the packet.
The only outreach outside of the meetings that we had with residents.
Yeah, sorry, just directly about the packet of information. Yes. I'm just trying to get down to that. Maybe Simon, I think this is more probably for you. In terms of survey results that you've seen across other NYCHA campuses, because I know that there have been other similar processes, maybe with different types of projects, not one for one. But what is the typical engagement rate you see for your surveys across the NYCHA development?
It's a really good question. I don't have stats for you right now, but I can look into it. I know anecdotally that, the closest thing we have is when people vote for tenant association elections, and the participation rate is definitely less than 10% for those kinds of processes.
You know that I'm going to be following up with you for that average across campuses for survey votes. I will leave it at that for now on the survey. Thank you.
I'm gonna come back at the end. Bert has a non-survey question or comment or statement.
Pertaining to the survey, we understand what the options were to be selected, but when the actual surveys were given out the day of, we took tours, correct? I mean, there was tours given. What was the process entirely? Because there is a question as to, was each option explained specifically? And I believe, if you could just answer that, please.
So when we had meetings, either the large townhome meetings or the smaller working group meetings that we were having with residents, all three of the options were explained. So the presentation package always included all three options that we through. We talked about the timeline associated with the options. We talked about the impacts of
my video on. They can't have you half naked.
Pamela. Pamela, can you mute yourself, please? Oh.
Oh, we just
Betty, sorry.
We described the impacts to residents in a general way, not very specifically, because certain people had different impacts. And then in the package, what we tried to do is we had all three of the options, and we tried to make sure it was consistent for people to understand, here's how your rent's going to be impacted. Here's if you're being relocated or not. So we tried to categorize it in that way in the packet. So when a resident responded to the survey, they could have theoretically taken a paper survey, gone home, never gone to any meetings, never gone to any tours, and responded to the survey. Most of the residents, I think, I mean, it's anecdotal, right? But most of the residents, came to a meeting, heard what we talked about, and then responded to the survey either online or with the paper survey.
Just one more question. From the first time that the survey was available for the residents up to the point of the deadline, how many weeks had passed? What was the timeline?
I mean, I think it was about, 60 some odd days. I think it was 60 days. I want to be exact. Was it
roughly, right?
60? Oh, you're saying that
No,
from
the
survey?
first-
Yeah, so it was a 60-day engagement. So theoretically, so again, in the process, if you went on a tour or if you came to a meeting, you could have completed a survey after the meeting, right? So after every meeting, after every tour, residents were provided with iPads or either paper surveys, or they had the QR codes up on even in these screens that they could use their camera to then access the website to then complete the survey online.
Right, okay, thank you.
Joe, sorry, Bert first, and we have to go online. Sorry, Joe, I forgot you're not actually on this committee. Betty?
Hi, just a couple of things that I'm bothered by. I actually don't think that the survey showed a big support for the demolition of the buildings project. That's my opinion. And also given that some of the process is kind of shaky to begin with, I would feel much more comfortable if there was a voting process that used voting machines and was in a more traditional way of doing voting. And I also feel that the options were not, there could have been an option that was a combination of new construction and rehabilitation, and that was not offered in this choice that people were making. And my other thought is, my impression of the process now is that the project is being scoped out and forging ahead no matter what anybody says. And that bothers me. I don't think that there's a mandate from the residents that they want to have the demolition of their buildings. And so that bothers me a lot. It's like, and I wonder if there is anything that could stop the implementation of the project. It sounds like no matter what people say, that it's going to go forward, and that bothers me. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Mike Noble?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Simon. Thank you, Simon. It's been nice. I'm speaking for myself as a resident of Elliot Houses now. And also a member of the working group and the continuing committees that deal with this every day. To give you some comfort on the survey, when the packets went out, I was able to sit down with dozens of residents and ask them whether they looked at the survey packets, informational packets, and what they thought about it, okay? And most of them discarded them or said it was too much to look at if it had NYCHA's emblem on it, its logo. Well, they immediately disregarded it, okay? That's the process around here. So I made it a point of going through the FAQ slide, which I had on my phone, to dispel some of the misinformation these folks had. Most of it had to do with displacement, okay? But a lot of it had to do with comparisons. This is what you have now, this is what you could get with this option and that option. And after a while, these folks, and I'm talking about dozens now, they came to see that, yep, okay, I do have an option here to look at this stuff and make a decision. So I was happy with that, because those people would never have voted in the first place. So with respect to the turnout, I can tell you that those who did turn out more than likely took the time to review the information that they were given. All right? These are folks who did their homework. Those who didn't vote, all right? Those are the people who did not take the time. So I don't have any sympathy for them. And for them to complain now, well, it's too late. If you really wanted to say something, you had the opportunity. And that's basically where I stand. And, 30% ain't bad in any election,
Thanks,
any
Mike.
turnout. Okay? So there
Appreciate
you have
that.
it.
I have a couple questions. Oh, she does? Pamela, sorry. I just checked and I didn't see your hand up. Oh, it's very light. It's like in your painting. Sorry, Pamela.
Sorry about
I just
that.
want everybody to know, by the way, that this room, we have until 9, so we're gonna have to speed it up a tiny bit.
I will be brief. I want to say that I agree with everything that Betty has said this evening. What I'm witnessing here and have tried to understand what's been going on, it seems to me to be such a train wreck that it's time to consider going back to roughly square one with a new RFP, a new survey. And I like Betty's idea of having it be an actual election with voting machines independent of any of these groups, independent of NYCHA or the related or the other developer. It seems to me that these very nice people who have just spoken this evening are working for a private developers, and they are desperate to hang on to this gig. I can see where they're coming from, but I think this whole thing is such a mess that it needs to be rebooted. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pamela. I'm gonna go first. So these are my feelings. What I have heard over the last, I don't know, since 8 months, what I have heard over the last 8 months, the two biggest issues are displacement and repairs, I think. So I'm a little curious why in the survey, there are no interim repairs in the renovation option. When you look at the side by side, no repairs. It's, the meanwhile plan.
Why is there no interim repairs in the renovation option?
Right. So while people are waiting,
Well-
let's say everybody voted for renovation and they're waiting for their, unit to be renovated, there's no meanwhile plan for the rest of the campuses.
Well, when you're renovating, when you're renovating like massive sites like this, 18 buildings, your management company is doing smaller things in residence units, but they're not doing any of the, kind of more major work, because there's a schedule that's been put together that kind of outlines exactly the buildings you're going in and the exact process you're going in. So like, that's the tip, we just like, you're doing normal work in the units, but you're not like the major renovation stuff that you're doing is a part of your scope of work for like a base renovation is not just like, it's not jumping around. There's a very strategic way of going about it.
Right. But so if I'm reading those 3 comparisons and I'm thinking what I really need, is maintenance. This plan doesn't have it. These 2 do. Check that box. The second question I have is about displacement, and Mike brought it up. On page 7, part 2, you say no relocation of tenants if there's new construction, 1A and 1B. But we know that's not true, right? Because you will have displacement of tenants. They will have to move even out of the one building, right? Yeah, it's all temporary. Either way, right? It's temporary. But it does read like, if you pick 1A or 1B, there's no displacement. And if you pick 2, there's definite displacement.
Well, again, so when we did the presentations, we actually had presentations that were based on the phases that you were in. So phase, as we call it, phase 0, the residents that will be temporarily relocated while there are new buildings or the new buildings being built. We shared with them very clearly that I believe the package did not reflect that there was going to be temporary displacement as a part of the new construction plan, because the overwhelming majority of residents would be in their units. And so it would have been challenging in a kind of broader package that was going out to all the residents to say, oh, there's going to be displacement, which was not necessarily an accurate reflection when only, 6% of the residents or 6% of the units on the campus would be displaced. When I say displaced, I'm talking about temporarily relocated.
Yeah.
Yes.
So again, though, you can see probably why if you're looking at 3 things side by side and one says displacement or relocation and one says no relocation, then you might pick the no relocation, right? Even though all 3 have relocation. So that's just unfortunate to me because I feel like it could be misleading on the 2 biggest issues that people bring up again and again and again. I also just wanted to ask, did you do any extra outreach to seniors who have no idea how to use a QR code?
Yeah,
and I'm not calling out seniors as like not being able to use a QR code. I'm just like, if my mom, who I saw yesterday, is like, I can't see this, what is that? Did you do any extra outreach to try to make sure that they understood that, especially since that's the only thing they got on their door?
Yeah, we did a number of senior breakfasts where we had coffee and donuts and, the agenda. We weren't walking through the entirety of the plan like we would do in the normal meetings, but we were sitting talking to the residents and talking to the seniors and then giving them opportunity to ask us questions. We had the models in there so we could show them what was happening. And then if they wanted to respond, they could respond to the survey. In a lot of those cases, a lot of those seniors didn't want to respond because they typically didn't feel comfortable signing stuff without having a family member come and join. And so what typically would happen was that would happen and they say, hey, can we meet again at some other point in time? And then we would have another meeting with that resident or a few of the residents with their daughter or their son or their nephew or whatever, so that the other person could kind of help them, feel a little bit more comfortable understanding what they were signing as a part of the plan.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to also clarify, if I can, the point about temporary relocation. So while options 1A and 1B maybe didn't emphasize that point as much, that was because only a small minority of households would actually have to do that under the rebuild plan. Only about 100, 120 households that currently live at Fulton Building 11 or Chelsea Addition are going to have to temporarily relocate while their buildings are being constructed. Whereas under the rehabilitation plan, given the extent of the work that needs to be done and creating unsafe conditions in the unit, practically everybody would need to be temporarily relocated. Okay, 100% of residents would have to be temporarily relocated while their apartments are fixed up before they could move back. So the relocation impact would have been much more significant under the rehabilitation plan than under the new construction plan.
Right. No, sorry, Joe. Word first. Thank you.
Yeah, I was
We're
thinking.
still getting through people, Dave.
I was thinking, now, I know there are developments, I know in Sheepshead Bay, Baychester, Bronxville. They're not complete redevelopments the way this is proposed. They're changes of management, but in those developments, there was an actual vote being taken. Why did you decide to do a survey rather than a vote?
So that's not 100% accurate. There was only, I think you might be referring to the voting process that was conducted at Nostrand houses in Sheepshead Bay. There was also a voting process that was recently conducted at Bronx River Addition in the Bronx. Those are the only 2 developments that have actually gone through No, Baychester did not go through a voting process. So as part of what's known as the Preservation Trust legislation that the state authorized in the creation of the NYCHA Public Housing Preservation Trust, this is an alternative approach that NYCHA is pursuing in tandem with PACT, which skews more towards partnerships with private sector. As a condition in the state legislation or as a requirement before development could actually be conveyed to the Public Housing Preservation Trust, this new entity that NYCHA is creating to convert developments to Section 8, there has to be a vote. And so there was a process to decide what that voting process should look like. And that's being rolled out now at some developments. That happened after this process had begun. And that's not a requirement of the PACT program, only to transition to the Public Housing Preservation Trust. Your question being, why didn't we use that voting process? Oh. Well, I mean, again, we worked with the resident leaders to devise a tool to measure and evaluate resident interest in these different options. And so the survey is the tool that we created.
Okay, Joe.
Okay, so a couple of things. One is, I'm sorry, Joe Restuccia from Co-Chair of Housing and Human Services. My baloney meter is on high right now, and I want to sort of cut through a bunch of things. First, we keep talking about this bad condition of the buildings. We all know that, but that's due to 30 years of NYCHA not doing repairs. So that's just a fact. That's not about how to do something going forward. The buildings, varying degrees, are in good or bad shape. And you're right, the high rises down here worse than the low rises, all right? ADA compliance. Bottom line, anybody who requests reasonable accommodation, you have to renovate that apartment and make it compliant. That's the law. You guys know it. So stop saying you're doing this new construction to make everything ADA compliant. The law is, if a person's there today, you got to move them around to get their apartment to be compliant so they can use it, like the man in the wheelchair was here today, right? We had a huge, broad discussion in that working group for 18 months or so. And what is missing here is that when you sat with this developer and decided to make a change, you chose not to come back to have a broader discussion whatsoever. Of course, if I'm a tenant in this building and I'm told and I'm asked, do I want a new building? It'll be faster. And if they're all big, I'm going to get it faster and I'm going to get repairs. I'm going to say yes, with no consequence for this. And Simon, here's what I say to you, because you sat in it. We had a carefully crafted proposal that balanced every single community issue, one against the other, to make sure that the tenants were part of it and that the community was part of it and all the housing people were part of it. And in fact, what happened is that got agreed to and you put out an RFP, right? This is not a scope change. This is a complete redo of this. Whether you have that right legally, it's not a scope change. Not to call it that is embarrassing. And I'm going to say it to you because I actually know you and I respect you. It is not a scope change. You put out an RFP for full renovation. Now I'm going to say again, if during the course of it, you have another project needs assessment and the cost balloon, that's also perfectly appropriate, right? It is hard. I want to support David Holoka. It is embarrassing to say that demolishing buildings and building a new buildings is cheaper than renovating existing buildings. I am sorry. I'm a practitioner, as you know. I have renovated old law tenements built in the 1880s, combined them, 3 or 4, 10 together, put in elevators, put in elevator shafts. This whole thing, you can do it if you want, and you make it, it's a choice. That's all I want to say, it's a choice. And I want to talk to the tenants for a second in this whole process. I don't believe we should do a new survey. I don't believe we should do a new RFP. I think we have to go ahead and figure out a way to come to some sort of negotiation on this overall for all the stakeholders in the community. And what is very frustrating for me is we now have talked about our survey. In my opinion, the survey was misleading, and got results and only had 28% of all the people in these developments. And many people opted out. And I'm sorry, Mike Noble, if you don't vote, it doesn't mean you don't have a voice going forward. You don't have a survey. It doesn't mean that we don't want to work together. I really appreciate it. So many people from Fulton tonight who said, what are we going to do here? How are we going to do it? Let's figure out a way to move ahead. That's where our energies need to be as a community board. We're the only public place where this discussion is happening. I was called to a meeting at the related offices on the 88th floor in March of last year. I had never seen any change whatsoever about demolition. All of a sudden, I'm sitting with every elected official. They had seen all this stuff. The tenant leaders were there. They came in late because they were in a Zoom meeting with the mayor. I found that bizarre that the mayor was involved in a Zoom meeting with the tenant leaders, right? And then this was presented. Here are the options. And Congressmember Nadler said, show them, show them, show them. I've never seen this stuff before. And we sat there going, yes, whatever the tenants want. This was never discussed. It had been discussed for months and months and months. That is a deliberate choice that was made. Let's call it what it is. It's okay. But now we're all in the open, right? And we're here together. We got to move ahead on it. I want to say you cannot have a one-size-fits-all solution for all of these campuses and all these buildings. Just get over where you are. This is the proposal. I am insulted as a long-term community member who is deeply engaged with everyone from Fulton to Elliot, up and down and around, and the block associations. I'm insulted. It's not how we do work, and it's embarrassing. So, in this thing at the end, 70% of the land is going to related. Don't forget that. We're going to segregate people in certain buildings. Our community board is never going to support that. We told our elected officials we're embarrassed about that. It's got to be fully integrated, this whole thing. And what's missing here is the consensus that was achieved. And what happened is, if I hear one more time, hiding behind what the tenants want, when NYCHA couldn't give up. They could not give a shit what tenants wanted for 30 years, and now all of a sudden they said what they wanted. We've got to move on from here. Can we please think about going forward, wrapping up, moving on to the next version of this, saying this, the survey was flawed, it's done, it's finished. The RFP certainly wasn't respected, but let's figure it out. And let's all work together to see one or other, what else can happen as a huge compromise plan. That's what I want to present.
This will be the last comment because we have one more thing to get to real quick. We got to go.
Question for Joe. Why wouldn't you call for reissuing the RFP?
I don't think we need to, first of all, the condition of the buildings is horrific. And this team working with NYCHA, if NYCHA is actually held to task and related is held to task, we can all jointly figure out something, because the truth is there's a developer in place and there's an agency that is actually hearing for the first time. You can't just do what you say you want to do, but let's work together and figure it out. That's why. I think it will set it back over a year, and that's not to be tolerated.
Okay, you know, I'm not reassured by the answers that we got tonight. I'm very bothered by them. I agree with Joe that this survey was really just kind of a front to make it look like a rezoning of large parts of Chelsea that would be a windfall for related was the idea of the NYCHA residents.
Dave, are you going somewhere with this?
I am going somewhere
Okay.
with this. You know, we're engaged in the environmental review process. We provided our comments to HPD and NYCHA, you know, it's the BLP conundrum. If you want to reject a project altogether, you can't, because you lose your place at the table. So you've got to provide comments, and when you do that, it telegraphs a certain amount of buy-in. I'm so turned off by the lack of answers that we got tonight.
Point of order, I'd like to request a time limit on remaining comments. It's 8:43, and we have to be done by 9 p.m. So I'd like to request 60 seconds per committee member left on the topic, if that could be entertained.
Okay, I'm gonna be quick. I want to make a motion to step outside of the environmental review process and communicate directly with our elected officials and tell them that we do not accept the legitimacy of this project, and that we want to roll it back to the point where the original RFP disengaged from the public.
I'd like to second that.
Sorry. Point of clarification. Can you just repeat what you mean pulling out of the environmental impact study?
Right now, our engagement with this project is through our comments on first of all, the draft scope of work, and we're looking forward to commenting on the draft EIS. I want to instead communicate directly outside of that playing field, where I think we're at a real disadvantage, and simply write to our electeds, most importantly, the Eric Botcher and Jerry Nadler, and let them know that we don't accept the legitimacy of where this is at. That we have a real problem with the break that was made with the original RFP. I personally feel that that's not going to slow down the transition of NYCHA residents into decent homes, but it'll probably reinforce the solution of renovation, which is going to get them there a lot faster. So, you know, this whole survey was a way for related to pit the residents against the community. And I think we want to tell our elected officials that.
So.
Well, that's the motion.
Yeah, so just still trying to clarify, I do not understand what you mean by pulling out of the EIS. Are you saying like detract our 22-page letter?
No, can I say that David, we have the authority to write a letter to the elected officials anyway.
Yeah.
Stepping out of the process doesn't solve anything. Writing a letter of our concerns could be a legitimate issue to raise.
And I have a major concern.
But we've been counting on
Sorry,
them.
I'm sorry. I have a major concern, as I've been saying all along. Okay. No, I just want a minute a second to respond. Please, everybody. I have a major concern, as I have from the beginning of when it was first suggested that we not respond to the EIS, of not being involved. Because then what happens?
Right, and that's why we submitted comments. I did so reluctantly
But I
because
think you're saying that again. I think what I'm hearing is that that's what you're making a motion on. So I just want to be super clear that I understand what the motion is.
so far, we've been relying on elected officials to read our comments on the draft scope of work. That's how we're commenting to them indirectly. I'm proposing that we send a letter to them directly.
Okay.
And let them know that they shouldn't construe our providing comments on the draft scope of work as our acceptance of the legitimacy of this project, that we view it as deeply flawed, illegitimate, and that it needs to be taken back to the point where related kidnapped the original RFP.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you very much. And there was a second. There were multiple seconds.
Yes, I seconded.
Yeah. Inga? Yeah. Jeffrey?
I am concerned at the direction the committee is considering based on this motion, just given the fact that not only, as Joe mentioned, this is the avenue for this discussion to take place, the community board. We are the agency through which these discussions for public discourse consistently take place. They have taken place in this community, in this room that I've been a part of for 15 years going on now, on topics varying from NYCHA to Chelsea Market to West Chelsea rezoning, and the idea that we are going to, step one, undermine a process just because we weren't a part of every step of the way, and that every other Chelsea resident wasn't a part of it every step of the way. I question whether or not it's appropriate to go that far and the slippery slope that takes us down if we begin to take that action. Number two, we are a legitimate city agency and we now have a seat at the table. Beyond this community meeting, we have a working group that meets with the development team, with NYCHA, and with the elected officials. And if you have a problem, I can tell you right now, if we hadn't had those working group meetings, this presentation would not have happened. None of the information that this community has received in the past 7 months would not have come forth were it not for the work the community board has been doing with our elected officials and the development team. Without question, I can tell you day in and day out. So the information will stop flowing if the community board retracts any interest of involvement.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I mean, we have a motion and it's seconded. So all in favor? Opposed? You need the hand count? And Jeffrey's present, not eligible. Abstain.
That's a no. Can I announce on the microphone that I'm feeling free?
Yeah, oh, sorry. One.
Jeffrey LaFrancois, Peony.
Joe is not on this committee, technically.
Unbelievable.
So I had 6 for, 5 opposed, 1 abstaining.
Could you repeat the vote, please?
6 in favor, 4 opposed, 1
5
abstention,
opposed.
5 opposed, and 1 Peony. And I guess I wonder, was this survey for Penn South Development?
Okay, point of order, point of order.
Yes. I am.
Okay, please stop. We're going to have to stop the comment now. We will write a letter. We'll talk about it a little later. And we have some new business or new business coming up for next month that I want to make sure that we get heard by the committee.
Hi, everybody. A couple of updates on old and new business as I sift through these 10 pages of notes we now have. The City of Yes housing plan has been released. As you recall, this committee took up City of Yes for Sustainability, Health, Kitchen, Land Use took up economic development, and so our friends on the Housing Committee will be taking the reins of the housing plan, which has just been released. It's 792 pages, so with our great thanks to Joe and Maria for their leading on that. However, the important thing is the Department of City Planning on Thursday, May 2nd, will be presenting to the Housing, Health, and Human Services Committee. And so everyone on crew is strongly encouraged to attend that meeting where they'll be able to ask questions of DCP. So again, Thursday, May 2nd. However, on May 8th, the Clinton Health Kitchen Land Use Committee will have that on their agenda. And then on Monday, May 20th, crew will have that on our agenda, but we will not have the agency present. So if you want agency participation, it's May 2nd at the Housing Committee with Joe and Maria. If there's no other old or new business updates, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight and participating.